I would like to call to order this meeting of the Shelton Metropolitan Parks District. We're having a Parks District Board meeting before the regular commission meeting tonight. I'm going to wait and do the Pledge of Allegiance during the regular meeting, so don't think that we forgot that. And there is one correction to the agenda for the Parks Board, and that is under public hearing, we are pulling number 2, which is the resolution to set ad valorem taxes for calendar year 2014. We already did that. So we're only going to be addressing the actual park budget this evening. So with that, I would like to close this portion of the meeting and recess into public hearing for the 2014 Shelton Metropolitan Parks District budget. And I will turn that over to Mr. O'Leary.
Thank you, Commissioner Pennell. We do 2 budgets because we have a separate, actually a separate municipal entity that is our Parks District. This is final public hearing. I just wanted to give you the highlights of the budget. There's some equipment that we're buying, including a postal digger and backhoe attachments and some things like that. There are some increases for our utility rates at our park facilities. There's under development something that might be interesting for some people, a off-leash dog park, and the idea is to attempt to work with the Port of Shelton to establish that up at the airport, up at Sanderson Field. So that's a possibility. We're going to pursue it. We may not be able to get there, but at least it'll allow us to do some planning. The dollars are in there to do that. There is a master plan intended for Northcliffe Neighborhood Park. That's an undeveloped park right now. And the idea is to put together plans to be able to develop that later. Also, there are plans to make renovations and actually develop the park up at Johnson Park, which is in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. Finally, there are some additional dollars that are in there in order to continue with the Callanan Park upgrades and modifications. We actually intended to pave the parking lot. Turned out that was way more costly than when we had originally proposed. So we're going to make lesser modifications and work our way through Callanan incrementally instead of all the way. I should mention that the voters approved this several years ago and included an additional levy amount so we could accumulate reserves and actually do some improvements, which is what we're doing. In fact, all the projects that are included in this are consistent with the capital facilities plan in order that we had in that plan. So that concludes staff's report, unless you have questions.
Okay. Is there any commission input at this point?
Well, just even the city of Shelton is faced with overregulation when it comes to paving that parking lot, huh? Even the city can't escape that thing. But anyway, so they're just going to gravel the parking lot, I guess, is what they're going to do instead of paving it?
For now, yeah. We'll eventually get to where we'll pave it, but for now, it was just way more money than we had, no matter from all sources. So,
and at least it'll be done right.
That's right.
Okay. Is there any other comment from the board? Do we have anybody signed up for public hearing or for public comment at this time? Okay. Is there anyone out there who would like to make public comment about the Parks District budget? Seeing none, I will recess out of the public hearing and back into the regular meeting. And at this time, I would entertain a motion to read, or I would like to have read the Parks budget resolution. Tracy, do you have that?
Resolution number SMPD 10-1213, a resolution of the Shelton Metropolitan Park District adopting the budget for the year ending December 31st, 2014.
Okay, is there a motion to approve SMPD 10-1213?
Madam Chair, I would move that we approve resolution number SMPD 10-1213.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve SMPD 10-1213, which is a resolution approving the Shelton Metropolitan Parks District budget for 2014. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And we do have one item on the consent agenda. Could we have that read, please, Tracy?
Consent agenda, manual warrant number 77848 in the amount of $108 to Shelton Publishing Incorporated.
Okay, and just a comment, this is billing for the notices for the public hearing that we just had, correct? Okay. Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
I would second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as read. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We have no old business, no new business. Is there any other general public comment on parks business at this point? Seeing none. Mark, did you have anything else to add? Okay. And I don't have a date for the next meeting. It will be, sometime next year, so there will be a new Parks Board at that time. So stay tuned for further developments. And with that, I will adjourn this meeting of the Shelton Metropolitan Park District Board.
And at this time, I'd like to call to order our regular City of Shelton Commission meeting. And before we say the Pledge of Allegiance, there's been an addition that we'd like to make for our agenda, and that's under new business. There is a little emergency roof repair issue on, I think, one of our city shop buildings that we are going to add to that. So that'll be under new business. And so could you please stand now and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on our agenda is our weekly commission reports. Commissioner Pennell.
Thank you. I will be busy towards the end of this week with all of the Christmas preparations. Looking forward to that. The big decorations go up on Thursday morning, which will be exciting. Those always look good once they get up and lit. Friday is First Friday, which is a special event in downtown Shelton, coinciding with Holiday Magic, which is a great logo for us. And that is starting with the tree lighting and shopping and all kinds of things. And then there are bonfires down the middle of Railroad to roast marshmallows and carolers and all kinds of neat stuff. Santa Claus will be there. It's all kinds of fun. And then Saturday is the parade, and that starts at 5, I believe. I will be doing my swan song riding on the garbage truck this year, so I'm looking forward to that. That's always fun. So hope to see everybody there.
Commissioner Olson.
I have no meetings this week, but I will be attending many of the festivities, and I'd like to take this moment also to congratulate our new incoming commissioner that will be taking office soon, so Tracy Moore. Thank you. That's my report.
All right. Tomorrow morning, I will be attending a left board meeting, and then on looks like on Saturday, I'm going to be in the parade, which is exciting. I love those things. And then on Friday also is First Friday downtown. Great event for everybody to come out. Even everybody that lives in the county, too, if you're hearing me on YouTube or wherever. Come on downtown on Friday, and Friday night we're going to have bonfires in the street, not in the buildings, and we're just going to have a wonderful time. So that concludes my report. A general public comment, we have 2 opportunities during our meetings for that. This is the first one. If anyone would like to speak to something, generally speaking, they can sign in, and if not, you'll have another opportunity a little farther down the line, but it appears someone has signed up. Thank you very much. And you can choose to speak now or later. Mr. Forrest Cooper, come on up.
Thank you very much, Commission, Mr. Mayor. I'm Forrest Cooper from 409 Railroad, which is also where Cooper Studios is located. And Commissioner Pennell and Mr. Mayor also just commented a little bit on the festivities this weekend, and I wanted to just remind everybody to come out to Holiday Magic. It's being put on by the Christmastown Kiwanis and the Shelton Downtown Merchants. They're going to be doing some great things Friday night. A lot of people forget about the Friday events, which are really fun. They're going to close the streets between 1st and 7th Street, have bonfires out there, the kiddie rides, all sorts of fun stuff, but they're also going to be doing a game card that night, and we have 27 merchants participating in that this year. So get a game card and come on down and play the game. You could collect those codes throughout the next day too, all through Saturday. Keep visiting those businesses and keep things rolling. So, and then it's going to wrap up with the, there'll be the tree lighting on Friday night. So you got marshmallow roasting, tree lighting, game card. There's also going to be some artists featured in many of the businesses that are included on the card. So come check that out. Then on Saturday, the big parade. And both of you are going to be in that. We'll be out there with our cameras. Make sure you find us and smile so I can get you that good headshot.
We'll smile for you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next is Tristan Starr. Did you want to speak now?
Maybe each one of these, want to take care of this before the holidays kick in, and do all about joy and things.
Before we put up our Christmas lights, huh?
Oh, well.
Mine should have been up a week ago, but I'm getting to them.
Really well.
They're in my trunk of my car.
You know where I'm coming from.
Thank you.
Hold on just a second here. Very organized with this thing. Here we go. Thank you. Everybody may be so slow. My name's Tristan Starr, and I live at 1519 Olympic Highway South, Shelton, Washington, 98584. And I'm here because this has been something that's been on my mind, going on, accumulating for 4 years, and it took a child to really push me to come forward. I personally like graffiti, and I follow artists worldwide. Most recently, the graffiti artist Banksy was sponsored by New York City. There was a week-long media blitz showing his art throughout neighborhoods. Tourism dollars. Saturday morning quilt shows feature graffiti quilts. Graffiti boards are used for sharing in our elementary schools. Most cities have graffiti wall art and use it to promote events. What we have in Shelton is not graffiti art. It's embarrassing. It's vandals tagging. It's now estimated to cost the U.S. $25 billion plus a year. A Realtors Association study states that home prices are decreased by 20%. It costs society decreased feelings of safety, lower community pride, at-risk youth. Perceptions of quality change when a neighborhood is tagged. Home sales, tourism, investment groups, all affected when the message of decay speaks loudly. The National Urban Institute has identified 5 neighborhood impacts from tagging. 1, intimidates residents and workers. It affects people either consciously or subconsciously. People do not understand the street culture. They assume the worst and are afraid to do anything about it. They feel insecure and unsafe. 2, scares away customers. Tagging gives the impression that an area is economically depressed. People think that if a property or business owner doesn't care about their image, then they don't care about the quality or good service. Tagging makes people feel uneasy about being in an area that has ugly writing on the walls. 3, discourages tourism. The same perceptions affect visitors. People seek places of beauty, history, and enjoyment, not tagged walls threatening them. 4, it reinforces negative behavior. It invites more vandalism. The longer it's up, it's saying, it's okay, saying, we want crime, saying, we've given up. 5, it sends the wrong message to our children, saying we, adults, don't care. We accept vandalism. The impact of tagging on a young life is often the strongest and harder to repair. Antisocial tendencies are groomed to become the norm. We need policy now. I'm not asking to penalize the homeowner like Seattle or other cities have done. I'm proposing cooperation with property owners. In our code revision, graffiti comes under Section 8, public nuisance, in that it annoys.
Tristan, we did have the 3-minute bell go off. Could you condense the remaining amount into a few sentences, please?
Right. Well, we could work together to get this done without penalizing people. We could work together in our neighborhoods. We can use the umbrella policy that we use for community service. We could figure out how to cover people going into the communities and paint it over, especially those doing community service and the taggers. We need a policy now. We want to have a happy, joyful city. We could use paint for positive ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Tristan. All right. Thank you. We have that information written down before us, too. So at this time, we're going to recess out of our regular meeting and open a public hearing. And this will be concerning a FEMA flood damage prevention ordinance update. And Jason Doze is going to present that to us now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is a pretty minor update overall, in my opinion, and where it stems from is basically 2008. The National Marine Fisheries Service brought up a class action suit against FEMA and argued that the floodplains weren't being developed appropriately, in that they were ignoring the Endangered Species Act. Because if you think about it, when a river floods or a lake floods, a fish doesn't know the difference between the normal lake or river or creek and the floodplain. It could be in a parking lot or whatever. And they successfully argued that this has an impact on endangered species. So in typical federal fashion, they said, okay, we haven't been applying this right. Local jurisdictions, you do something to change this. And so in 2009, the city informed the Seattle office of FEMA that we would be door 3, as it's called, community, and we would review new development on a case-by-case basis in the floodplain for impacts to endangered species. Because, in part, we don't have a lot of development in the floodplain. There's not a lot of new development in our downtown, is basically where our floodplain is, from about 3rd Street east to Oakland Bay. And, this was accepted by FEMA representatives. This is great. Let's do it this way. It's the best way for Shelton to deal with it. Well, in 2012, we were visited by DOE and National Marine Fisheries personnel who came in and they said, well, hey, where's your documentation on performing these floodplain habitat impact assessments? And, kind of say what? That was kind of the response. We haven't had any development in the floodplain. They named 5 properties in a letter that we were sent in 2012, and we were able to address those. We did review those for impacts because they were new development. It was namely Dairy Queen, the new substation PUD just constructed on 1st Street. It was our pump station on Front Street, and 2 others that I'm forgetting right now. Did I say the fire station? That was one of them. But we basically did habitat assessments for those. But then they said, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about all these other permits that were in the floodplain. And, as I look at them, I'm like, well, that was for a re-roof. That one was for changing out windows. This one was for siding. And the assertion by National Marine Fisheries representatives was that could have an impact on endangered species. He couldn't quite tell me how, but that was the assertion. He says, show me in your ordinance where it says those are exempt. And he was absolutely right. There is no exemption from review. So, long story short, there were a number of just language inclusions DOE wanted that, quite frankly, wouldn't impact the city because they deal with things like rivers and creeks that don't have an identified floodway. Well, we have an identified floodway, so we have regulations to deal with that. But the mandatory language that the feds require isn't in our ordinance. So two of the amendments address that directly, just language we need to have in there because we do. The largest amount of proposed changes deal with the Endangered Species Act. And what I would point out specifically are the two new sections, 1810-360, which I've titled Compliance with Endangered Species Act, and 1810-370, which are exemptions from demonstration of compliance with the Endangered Species Act. And basically it gives us a good path and a clear path for applicants to, there's actually a checklist I forgot to talk about that National Marine Fisheries representatives forwarded to me. And because I asked them, I go, what would be sufficient review of, say, the example I gave is the Mel building. Let's say somebody comes in, wants to rehab the building. Well, frankly, I don't see much danger of impacting habitat when you have a 100% covered site and a structure on the site. Whether they want to rehab the building or demolish it and construct a new one, pretty difficult to say there's going to be a real impact. So they said, good point. Developed downtown. We'll use this checklist. This checklist is a good place to start. If you don't answer these questions in the right fashion, and depending on the question, you can tell whether yes or no is the quote-unquote right answer for yes or no impacts. That would tell you whether or not you need to go further with a biological assessment. So that's one reason I'm recommending making this checklist a required part of any new development in the floodplain that isn't exempt from the Endangered Species Act. And I can tell you, as a matter of fact, 95% of what we deal with is re-roofs, new signs, new windows, painting a building, things of that nature, replacing an HVAC system on a roof. Those things are clearly exempt now in our code. And really what this comes down to is documentation, where we kind of got our hands slapped by DOE and National Marine Fisheries is we weren't documenting. And I clearly don't think it's acceptable to do a biological assessment for each of those exempt projects. I mean, really, we're just trying to find a way to deal with the Endangered Species Act in an appropriate fashion and call out specifically what we're saying is exempt development. And there is an attached ordinance that I'm hoping the Commission would entertain a first reading of this evening and put it on the consent agenda for your next meeting for second reading and adoption. And I would welcome any questions you might have.
Questions?
So before this exemption, let's see, which is it, E? Mm-hmm. That was not part of it before?
Well, the normal street parking lot maintenance and striping, these are all items that were brought up by National Marine Fisheries. And I got it about as broad as I think the federal rules would allow, because the feds released a document, which I do have in here, but it's quite thick, that had their interpretation of the biological opinion and what they thought was safe to exempt. They won't guarantee it's safe to exempt, but it's a weird situation because nobody wants to give clear direction to any local jurisdiction about what's okay and what's not. And what I saw in talking with the state people, the fisheries people, and then looking at some other ordinances that other local communities have adopted, this seems like the best way to go. Call out specifically what you want to exempt. And this isn't a catch-all list. I mean, it's, maintenance of existing generally is going to be exempt. I mean, it even allows for small additions to existing structures, if that makes sense. Some projects would be required to fill out the checklist. If we can't make the call comfortably at the local level that it wouldn't have an impact, there's two options to deal with it. One, the applicant takes their project directly to National Marine Fisheries and gets their buy-off on it, or two, they do a biological assessment flat out. Hire a consultant, look at it for impacts to fish habitat in a flood situation. And the point we're at right now without these amendments is we require, the best way I could figure that was most equitable to document should they come back and look at us again, is to have applicants, even if they're doing a re-roof, I help them do it, but I have them fill out the checklist. I mean, I'll stand there at the counter and kind of go through some of the stuff for them, and then we have it in the file, and it's clearly not an impact, and we let them do it. But this way, we wouldn't even have to fill out the checklist. You can just write on the permit, exempt from Endangered Species Act per 1810, Section C, or whatever. And should the commission adopt this, this also gets forwarded to DOE and also, again, to National Marine Fisheries. So it's not like we're just doing this in a vacuum. They're going to look at what we adopted. They won't give clear direction now. They will on the federal stuff, but in the letter I received from DOE, said, we think it looks good the way you're dealing with the ESA, the Endangered Species Act, but we're not going to say whether or not it meets the requirements until you adopt it. You know, they want to see the adopted copy, and it's weird, is the best I can say.
Well, it sounds like you're attempting to put a common sense approach to a very complicated issue, and I would think that if you were painting your building or replacing a window in an existing structure especially, that it probably wouldn't have a whole lot of effect to the endangered species. So I think I've read it, and it looks like you are endeavoring to come up with a practical plan that would work for Shelton, and it sounds good to me. So.
Good to hear.
But I'm only one person sitting here. Any more questions or comments for Jason? All right, I guess at this time we have opportunity for public testimony. So if anybody would like to speak to this, you would come and sign in, and that's just one particular issue. If there is none, then we can move forward. If no one is here to speak to this issue, then I'm going to close this public hearing, and I'm going to see if my fellow commissioners, if we are in concurrence here on this, that we'll follow staff's recommendation that this would be a first reading and that the second would be on the December 9th issue. So if we are open to do that, then I would ask for a first reading, and it appears we don't have any objections. So could we have a first reading, please?
Ordinance number 1839-1213, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington relating to flood damage prevention, amending Shelton Municipal Code Chapter 18.10 by incorporating changes to address deficiencies cited by the Washington State Department of Ecology.
Okay, and the second reading, then we are going to place that on the December 9th, right? Okay. Did you say that or I said it? I said it, doesn't matter. Okay, at this point now we're going to do another recess. We're recessing out of our regular meeting and opening up another public hearing. And this public hearing is concerning a right-of-way on Delaware Street, and Mike Michael was going to present this, but it looks like he has a substitute tonight. Dennis McDonald.
I'm going to let Dennis McDonald go over the specifics of what transpired here with regard to the right-of-way permit, and I'm going to hand out a small map that's color-coded so you can see the right-of-way swap that's going on here.
Good evening, Commissioner. This is a formal adoption process, so let me read right from the Commission briefing report. On April 25th, 2012, the Public Works Department received an application for vacation of public right-of-way from Agate Land Surveying, PLLC, on behalf of the Mason County Shelter. The request is to vacate approximately 540 square feet South Delaware Street between Olympic Highway South and Sagerson Avenue. City staff has evaluated the application for vacation of the portion of the right-of-way and has determined that the city has reached agreement with Mason County Shelter Organization to vacate this portion of right-of-way containing the 540 square feet in exchange for 540 square feet associated with the proposed boundary line adjustment. So there's this process, which is the vacation, and this also has a relationship with a boundary line adjustment, which Jason Dose is working on. On November 4th, the commission signed a resolution 1055-1113 declaring this public hearing tonight, December 2nd, 2013. So Mason County has reviewed the proposed ordinance on November 12th and has no recommended changes to the legal description. So what you have, the Director of Public Works, Greg, has passed out this drawing, and it shows colorization showing the swap of these different sections to better serve for the city's right-of-way. So at this point, would one recommend, staff at the end here is recommending that we have an ordinance that would establish this vacation, and the desire is to have a first reading this evening and then to have a second reading on December 9th. So at this point,
Questions or comments?
So, Dennis, it's not really a vacation the way we normally look at it, because it's a swap of two different pieces of land. And so does it work the same way that we're retaining easements and all that kind of thing like we normally do?
the director's nodding his head yes, so I'm saying yeah.
All right.
I may just respond. I'm not intimately familiar with this particular one, but typically anytime there's a right-of-way that moves from right-of-way, public right-of-way into somebody else's ownership, which is happening here, swap or otherwise, it requires this action.
Okay.
And this is kind of for our new homeless shelter, right?
Yes.
It's a good thing.
Yes.
Any more questions or comments? If not, at this time, public comment about this issue. This is a public hearing, so anyone from the public like to speak about this vacation? Seeing none, I think at this time we're going to close this public hearing, and we're going to go back into our regular scheduled commission meeting. And if I can be so bold to say our commissioners agree upon this, I think that we will place this, have the first reading tonight, and then place the second reading on the December consent agenda for December 9th. So could we have the first reading, please?
Ordinance number 1841-1213, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, vacating a portion of Delaware Street.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we are going to recess out of our regular meeting and back into another public hearing. And this will be concerning our final budget hearing. And so at this time, I'll turn it over to our administrator, Dave O'Leary.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. At this point, it's my intention to park here for the time being, and I'm going to try to stay here during the course of this presentation, but there may be a point where I want to change up something where I'll want to get to the podium so I can actually see some of the smaller print on the screen. So we're doing this for the first time in our where I'm actually doing this instead of just clicking through it. So this is our 2014 proposed budget. This is based on recommendations that come from the Finance Committee, which includes Finance Director Byerly, Commissioner Olson, and myself. What I like to do is start with, what's the context economically for the budget, and I think it's a fair statement, especially in Shelton, to say that there's a sluggish recovery underway. We're doing slightly better than others. We're not doing as well as some are. In fact, We recently got a look at a Realtor presentation where they analyzed property values in Mason County and surrounding, and all the surrounding counties are doing better than Mason County is, but what that means is that good news is probably on the way. We will participate in the recovery, just not as soon as some of the others, I think. I think the long term looks pretty promising, and I think that we're doing the right things today in order to ensure that we have a robust recovery when the time is right, and then we have, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I think in the near term, the conditions are not sustainable. In fact, what I mean by that is that our revenues continue to outperform the expenses. So in other words, we continue to have to try to struggle to meet our expenses. Some of our strategies to deal with these challenges is our economic development primarily, and the two methods that we've used to resolve this have to do with things that are crucial to new development. If you want to build something, if you want to start a new business, you need a place to do it. And so we need to, and we're taking steps within this budget and have otherwise, in order to be able to have lands that are available for development, for job-based development. The other thing that this kind of development needs is utilities, and we've already done an enormous amount, spent a lot of money in order to be able to prepare the way for this kind of development. We're actually, at this point, in pretty good shape financially. We have adequate reserves, in fact, more than adequate reserves, at least for the time being. And I think this has come because we've made some very difficult choices in the past that have put us in this position. We did that through policies, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, and also through fairly conservative financial management, and that continues. Our biggest challenges are in the general fund, but there are other challenges in other funds as well. So let's talk about economic development. I'm not going to say a lot about this, but it is 600 acres. We are almost through processing the permits for this, and there's a few more steps which we're making progress just about all the way through. And this, I think the only thing that could slow this down is the fact that the economy is just maybe not ripe for it, but it's coming. And so, but we don't know when. Frankly, I was counting on this development in 2008, and we've been working on it with the existing developer for about 8 years, maybe pushing 9. And at any rate, but it will be a game changer for Shelton. I have another slide which I'm not going to show you today, which shows the size of this project relative to the size of Shelton, and it is maybe 1/5 or 1/6 of the total land size of Shelton. So it's big, and it will provide growth and opportunities for development for 20 years after it starts up. This is another proposal that is currently that's got funding proposed within the budget, and it's to expand our urban growth area. Now this is double the size of Shelton Hills, to try to put a scale on it. It's in the same general area. It is in an area that is perfect for, I think, industrial development. You have the prison on one side, the airport on the other, the state patrol is there, you've got the new racetrack, there's a landfill, new county shops are in the area. It's perfect for this, and what it needs to be done in order to be able to provide utilities for it is brought into the urban growth area. And in fact, utilities are there. We've already built sewer to the northeast corner of that property. And we also have, in fact, there's a pressure line that runs along that runs around the northern middle part where you see Dayton Airport Road. It's not the extreme north end, it's where Dayton Airport Road runs into the properties where these utilities are. But it provides, but it gives us the utilities that we need in order to be able to do this development. There are 4 property owners, and all 4 are making an equal contribution to getting the environmental reviews done that are necessary to bring it into the city and be able to process the permits in there expeditiously. Let's talk about the general fund, where I mentioned where our challenges were. In Back in 2008, we adopted a resolution that established these policies, and then last year in 2012, about a little over a year ago, we updated them. Not changed anything substantively, just to update some of the assumptions that existed at the time, but the core of this remained the same. There were really three pieces of this. One of them was that we balanced the budget, and not balance resources, meaning you're against expenses, but balance revenue against expenses. The other thing that we do is we maintain a minimal amount of reserves, and we've been doing that. And the other is that we use one-time revenues for one-time expenses only, and there's a very good reason for that. If you use a one-time revenue, which could include sales tax on new construction, it could include carryover dollars, things that happen, something that happens once. If you spend that on salaries, then when the revenue source goes away, and it will, because it's only one time, then you don't have the money to pay for the ongoing expenses. So what we've been able to do is wean ourselves away from relying on that, and we did years ago, and to where we have a more predictable revenue stream. The underlying goal behind all this thing is to have sustainable finances so that you can depend from one year to the next on being able to maintain services and be able to keep your people and not be where we are in this recession. It's fleeting. And let me explain why. This is real simple. This is just going to be a chart, and they're going to put two lines on it, and one of them represents income and the other one represents expenses, as you can see from the green and the red lines there. And you start off and went the wrong way. Now, you can see that there's a slight increase in the revenue there over time. And the trouble is that you put expenses and they start down there low, but then they catch up. And that's what's been happening with us. And so you get to the point where those two lines are going to cross a point in time, and you have to make an adjustment. You either have to get new revenue or you have to cut expenses. So let's assume in this particular case that we did new revenue. This would be like we just passed a public safety sales tax a couple of years ago. So that puts it up, and then you're good to go, except for over time your expenses continue to exceed revenues, because that only happened once. You just raise the base, and then you go on. So this year you decide, well, we're going to cut expenses, and we've done all this. So you cut expenses, and then they go on up ahead, following the same trend line, and then you end up with and then your income doesn't keep up with it. Then you do the same thing again, and then you point a convergence, and you do it again, and this is a really good model for what we've actually been doing. And so now we're at that point, and we got to make a choice. We got to decide what we're going to do, because we're getting to the point where those two lines are converging. Now, what I want to do, we've been using a tool. Is that the one? No. There you go. Okay, this is the one I may have to move on, but if you look over in this area here, these are different variables that you can plug into that are assumptions that drive what the result is going to be. This area up here at the top, up in this area here, is whether or not you balance your budget, and that. And these little blocks here off the end, that indicates whether you're upside down or you're right side up. And and this over here shows, also the line shows you year by year, did you cut any employees? And essentially, that's the unfortunate reality of having less money than you've got revenue, is that you've got to make adjustments, and most of our money goes to support people, to support employees. This over here shows an accumulation of lost employees over time, and this here is the impact on fund balance. Now this is assuming that we maintain our existing policies. So I know you can't see this, but I'm going to just explain what they mean. This first one is program enhancements, and we've got some of those this year, not very much, and most of them are things that we've got to do because the price went up on it for some reason, and I'll give you the details later on that. And so let me show that says we're not going to do them. And, excuse me, this is going to say that we do them. Come on. This is why I might have to move. Jeez. I can't see it. There. Now that means that we are going to do the program enhancements. So, in other words, what this means is that if you don't change anything, if you just leave things as they are, we're okay based on what you see are there now. And what I'm showing you is some things that are the reality for us that we're not able to control. So the next thing I'm going to change is salaries. What we ran into is that we were is that we didn't give people raises for 3 years. And now, and if we don't give people raises, then you lose them. And other organizations, other cities that are comparables to us, that we use as comparables, and they're real, they'll hire them away from us because, you tend to lose your best people. So you got to keep up, otherwise you're not competitive in the marketplace. So for the first time in, any rate, so we went ahead and negotiated after a lot of pressure from our unions to give raises, and there's 3% annual for our police department employees, at least for the sworn officers, and then everybody else got 1% per year over the next 3 years. The non-represented, the assumption is that they'll do a 1% as well. The next one is we've been working with our, we've been working under the assumption that our, come on, boy, that's hard to control there. The next one has to do with our fire station. And when we first started planning and setting up the rehabilitation of our fire station, the real estate excise tax that we were making annually was that year $210,000 that we could set aside for that purpose. The payments ended up being, based on our projections, and they were real, it was $190,000. So we had a little bit of cushion there. Well, what happened when we came to the recession is that the $210,000 real estate excise tax revenue dropped to $30,000 a year. So we've had to make up the difference, and when we saw the recession coming and the payments hadn't started, we started banking money. We said, well, let's keep some money set aside in there because we know that it's coming, and the money just ran out. So we have to make up the full difference between what our real estate excise tax is and what the payments actually are, and that's another $70,000 this year. Finally, there's one more thing in here, and you can see that as you make these changes, things could keep getting tougher and tougher. These are in order to be able to balance the budget, this is the accumulated employees lost year by year over the next 6 years. And there's one more, and it has to do with the cost of fire service. These are both public safety expenses, by the way. Come on. There. That is Mason. We have a contract with Mason 5, or Central Mason Fire and Rescue now, that our payment to them is based on what they would be collecting if we had annexed into the district. They had, and guess what? Their voters voted to approve a levy lid lift in the Mason 5 district. And so that means that our additional cost to them is $150,000 per year, and we don't have it, not without making, as you can see. So we were able to negotiate with them and move that to $50,000 increase each of the next 3 years until we get to the $150,000 that we would pay them under the contract, and so that's where we ended up. Now, all it takes to turn this around is an improving economy, but unfortunately we don't have that just yet. So that was our 6-year forecast. Doesn't look so bad. And I'll tell you, the numbers don't look so bad this year because we've got reserves, we can cover this stuff. But what's scary is the out years, and at some point you have to make a decision that you're going to cut services, and it isn't going to be pleasant, but it is easier to move into these things incrementally than it is to try to do it all at once, which will happen if we just postpone and postpone and postpone. Here are the. I should say that we thought we were going to be in better shape this year than what we are. We had hoped, at any rate. And so we actually we've been sitting on people the past half dozen years, 6, 7 years, and saying, just don't ask. Whatever you need, don't ask unless it's really critical or a mandate or somebody's going to get hurt, something of that nature. And so but this year we said, well, let's look at it. At the very least, let's look at the economy seems to be doing a little better. Maybe we're going to start coming out of this thing. And so we asked people for what they would like in order to make them better able to perform in their missions. And at the end of the day, we couldn't do we could do almost none of it. These program enhancements are things that are being brought to us that are substantially beyond our control. And I think I just talked about most of them. The Central Mason fee increase, the fire station payment increase, smaller ones that I didn't show but are in there. We do have almost another $10,000 a year to pay to MACECOM for emergency dispatch services. The wage and benefit increases already talked about. Another thing that happened this year that we weren't expecting was the legislature improved an increase in the retirement contributions. That's what that purse means. Finally, there is some money in there for records management. There's a little bit of one-time in records management as well. It's a very small amount of money, but it could yield very big impacts, and there's a huge price to pay if we don't get on top of this. The state of Washington obliges us to do a good job of records management. In fact, they want you to do more than a good job. They want you to do a perfect job. So they expect you to know where all your records are and be able to put your hands on them for when any citizen or anybody else comes in and makes a record request. We're marginally, if that, up to being able to perform to that level right now. And so what we need to do is get on top of that. So we put a little bit of resources in there to try to change around our record system so we can do that more effectively, and we just must. The potential losses are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mason County has lost 2 records searches. I think the accumulated total of those things was $200,000 or $250,000, maybe a little more. The most recent one I heard about was a $500,000 loss because somebody missed an email. I mean, it's just that scary. So we're trying to do something, and that is essentially the only program enhancement that we've got in there for ongoing resources. If you want to get back and you say, okay, we want to straighten this out, we want to do it by making cuts, and it may be your only choice. This is the context, and if you look inside your budget report, it's on page. It's on page 4. The details to this chart are in there. And it's basically a laundry list of what is it that we can cut if you want to cut something. Essentially, the bulk of our dollars go to public safety services. The others are spread across a variety of other programs, and most of the individual programmatic expenses are fairly small. So, something I need to, at any rate. So it makes it a real challenge to be able to find the money. Some of an emerging challenge is something going on in the police department. We have a detective. He's a really good officer, and he's been offered a really good opportunity to to serve for a 3-year position in the State Patrol's Missing and Exploited Children's Task Force. Think of how that would make you feel to work in that, and the benefit that it brings to us after he's done with that kind of work and come back and working for our department. So I really want him to go. And, the state, he'll still remain in our payroll, so at the end of 3 years, he's still a Shelton employee, comes back, and the state covers the bulk of the costs while that's underway. But the problem is it creates one fewer employee on our police force. If we hire an employee, I won't cut. There's just no way that we can't do it without tapping into reserves. If we hire a replacement officer, depending on if you about have to hire a reserve, because by the time you get a rookie officer trained, which takes upwards of a year, you're into the next budget cycle and you may have to cut them. And so a reserve is probably the only option, and the scary part is you don't know how long you can keep them. And so that the decision is that assuming that we go forward like it is, if that's your choice, then the plan would be to reduce the detective squad from one person in there, from two people in there to one. That's going to be a problem, because the kind of crimes the detectives typically investigate are serious crimes. It's robberies and rapes and crimes of violence, those kinds of things. And we actually have a fairly low violent crime rate, but we still have some. Most of our crime rate is driven by property crime, but still, you want people to investigate those violent crimes, and there's plenty to do for 2 officers. Also, it'll hurt us if we have a very serious crime like a homicide that requires intensive investigation. You only have 1 detective, but we do have, thankfully, people on the patrol force, the patrol units that are qualified detectives and can come back and work as a detective for a time to fill in. Additionally, in terms of being able to get the investigations done, what we did before when we went through a year with only 1 detective is we had patrol officers doing those investigations, which isn't ideal, but it's the best that you can do. I'm deliberately not sugarcoating this, because there's just some real difficult choices that we're facing. There is one-time money as well. And this is the list of things that we're recommending to fund for that. The urban growth area expansion, that is the future of Shelton. That is a job center in the future, but it's going to be many years away. It's not helping us right now. The Civic Center roof coating, our roof on this building is shot. We get leaks in it every year. We looked at replacing the roof, and it was just tearing it off and replacing it with new, and it was $500,000, which we don't have. We found a technological solution, which is a new membrane product that'll should buy us another 10 years, and it costs $150,000 to put the whole roof on. So the recommendation is to do just a year at a time and get the worst of it in the first year, the second worst of it in the second year, and the last of it in the third year. There is a lot of incentive, and I think a lot of good public safety reasons for continuing to get after these derelict buildings that we've got around town. So we've got some money in there to do that. The two big items are really expenses that are ongoing and carried over from prior years. It's the financial system. We've started on that project. We just haven't got it implemented yet. We've already made the commitment that we've got a vendor. We've picked it out. We're already working with them to buy it. The other one is street projects that were substantially improved for expenditure this year, and we just didn't get everything done to be able to get them underway. Records management software, that $22,000, that's the other part of the one that I shared with you earlier to try to deal with our records. The Goose Lake legal consultant, that one is that one's just hoping that Shelton Hills starts. If it does, they're going to want us to take ownership of Goose Lake after it's cleaned up, and we just need to make sure that we know that it's done right. So we'll need legal to help us get through that. So it's a real specialized area of law. There's one exception. The resolution that I talked about earlier has some rules, and basically, if we violate the rules in the resolution, in order to violate the rules, the commissioners have to authorize an exception. In this case, we're already overspending, we're over budgeting revenues to expenses by $231,300. So what we will do is ask you to authorize that. Now, we think that that will probably end up with that much to the good, because people don't always spend everything that they we think we'll be able to carry over that much into next year. Typically, what we carry over is about a little over $200,000, in other words, which is, maybe 2% of the total budget. The department heads don't generally spend down everything, so we think we'll have that to carry over. But just to do what we're doing, we need to show that we need to count those dollars that we're not going to spend this year to roll into next year. And staff recommendation is to authorize the exception. Other programs, recent, we had a lot of construction recently in the sewer fund, and this is the other side of the benefit that we can get, potential economic development benefit, is that we've borrowed a lot of money. We've got the projects, and we've also got a cleaner environment, which will allow for shellfish expansion. But we got to make the payments. The average residential bill after a 15, not a 22, but a 15% increase recently, effective February, the average residential bill is going to be around $91, which was closer to 97 or 100 in that range. But what we're looking for is grant dollars to do additional projects that are still mandated. And then we're also looking for grants for rate relief as well. The water fund, we do have an obligation to build a pressure zone to meet an obligation for our regional partner. And we're still analyzing that. You've seen the details on that. I won't go through those here, but should mention that part of our plan on that is to seek grant dollars for it. This is kind of a two-pronged slide. We just did our second year performance measures, and it's really pretty cool, because in most of the measures we're in measuring, just equalizing for population, everything else. We're doing in the top half of the performance measures that we're seeing with other cities that are in our group. Well, that's just pretty darn good under the circumstances. For 3 years, we didn't give our employees raises, at least COLAs. And a lot of employees, especially long-term employees, actually, we were at the same time we capped their wages, and they're topped out. They're at the top of their performance. They didn't get any step increases. We were increasing their insurance premium copays. So in other words, they were taking home less one year after another than they did previously. So there was actual reductions in take-home pay. And yet, they come to work every day and get it done. They're doing the work. It's just remarkable. And I wish that we had better news for them than what we have now. I think we've done as much as we can. I wish we could do more. But I think my main feeling is just incredible humility over the benefits that we're getting from these folks, because we just keep kicking on them, and they just keep getting up and coming to work and doing the work and keeping their chin up and getting it done. And so I just wanted to, before I get done with this year's budget, I wanted to say thanks and well done to our employees. So, at any rate, I think Kathy has a few words. And
just two? Oh, you said few. Okay.
Thank you. Commissioners, if you look on page 11 of the packet, that's the listing of that's our final budget listed by the individual funds, and they total $47,466,822. Now, this is the same amounts that were in the preliminary budget. There were no changes to the fund totals as presented. But on the next page, page 12, that is all the departments within the general fund. And there were a couple of minor calculation changes, just a little over $3,000 in a couple of the departments, and it was just offset by the ending fund balance. So again, the full budget for the general fund is the same total as it was on the preliminary budget. And that's all the changes that were done between now and the preliminary budget. So that's all I have to say.
Wow.
Unless you have some questions.
Questions and comments. This is our opportunity to talk about this budget, and so if my fellow commissioners have anything they would like to say, now would be the opportunity to do that.
I think it's a good budget. It's unfortunate that things didn't improve as much as we had hoped they would, but I think we've always been proactive and conservative on this, and I think it's done us good in the long run. So again, it would be great to give everybody everything they want, but that doesn't happen in life, and it doesn't happen here as much as we might want it to. So, and I think the important thing to remember is that we are dealing with the city as a whole as well. We're not separating out one department or another. We're talking about the overall good of the city as a whole. And I think that's what this budget reflects.
Questions, comments?
About the potential loss of law enforcement, indications are that the chief thinks that we can sort of juggle that around a little bit, and there'll be some things that we won't be able to take care of, but generally your feeling is it's going to be all right.
If nothing big happens, that'll take additional juggling to get by.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because it always sounds scary when you cut law enforcement. Everybody really reacts to that, and unfortunately it's kind of what we have to do. So.
Well, I've been fighting this one for 3 months. I've come up with every option I could possibly think of, including not doing certain remodeling projects or whatever we have. And what I come back to is, and I commend the financial committee for putting this together, and I appreciate all the work that everyone's done. It's tough to do, and you kind of, it's a crapshoot. You really don't know if you're going to have $200,000 extra or $200,000 less. The real time is when we actually start getting some businesses and getting some economic development, to when we can probably actually give people real raises, or we can actually start doing some of these things. We've been under such a burden on the sewage treatment plants and on the basins and all of this stuff that it just, at some point, payday's got to come. But I just have to say that in representing the people, I don't know anyone out there that wants to cut a policeman, or not fully fund the police, or reduce a police officer. I don't know anyone out there, and I would have to say that that's where I come down to. I mean, if there was a time for reserves, if there was a time to postpone one remodeling project, if there was a time to possibly only fix 9 out of 10 potholes, I would say this would be the time. Not just because of the police needing a policeman, but because the fact that the voters last year voted in a 0.1% increase. And when they do that, we got to understand that the voters said, we want this protected. And they, when they did that, I have to say, okay, this is where I am. If we don't get some big financial help with businesses and whatnot coming into town, we're not just going to be cutting policemen, we're going to be cutting a lot of other things probably. I mean, we are really in kind of up a creek with a little paddle. Okay? And, I mean, I recognize that. I've talked to the administrator over and over and over about this budget, and I believe the Financial Committee came up with a reasonable approach, but listening to the citizens, looking at, crime statistics, looking at the condition of our city, looking at who we represent, which is the people, then I would say I would strongly encourage finding that $85,000, whether it's postponing this roof project for 1 year, whether it's, I love paving streets, man, I wish we could pave all these streets right now. I mean, I was really excited about what we've done, but if it means just a $20,000 or $30,000 decrease in paving streets this next year, I'm at that point to where I would really like us to look and see if there isn't a possibility of maintaining that police for 1 more year. And if it doesn't, if next year we're in the same boat, then I would have to say, okay, I did everything I could, but I know I have a business downtown, and I know how much it means to me to have a policeman walking the street downtown. And if it means that we're not going to have that person, or if it means that there's going to be one less person to be able to help on, we've had some murders in this city. We've had some major crimes. It takes people to do that. And so whether we can limp by or not, I think the reason that I would be strongly in favor of funding this position is probably because last year the voters voted the 0.1% increase. And so that's my speech on it. That's my spill on it. I would hope that we could find that money and put that in the budget. But again, that's what this is about, is us finding out from the people that voted us into office exactly what they feel. Yeah, they like new pavement, but they definitely want a policeman there when they need one. And I would have to say I would strongly encourage us to find that money. That's my statement. Of course, I am the commissioner of public safety, so obviously I'd be kind of rooting for that one, a little bit too, but it's a tough deal. These budgets are tough, and there's cuts and things that have to be made, and we're just in a tough place. We've been there, and we really need some growth. We need some businesses. We need some income. But at this moment, I would go 1 more year and try and at least not reduce this police force anymore, and next year, whatever. So, we're still thinking about this, aren't we? I mean, isn't that what comments are all about? So, okay, my fellow commissioners have anything else they want to add about the budget? Because we do have an opportunity for public testimony here. And so, if no one else has anything more to say, we can go into that. Modus operandi or whatever. If anyone else wants to say anything about the city budget, about the police, about anything, now's an opportunity. All you have to do is sign your name, and you put your little address on there, and you could say something. It's a 3-minute time limit. So what they say, speak now or forever hold your peace. Why don't you do it first? It's all right. Virgil will let you do that.
Well, I'm here to talk about
this is
a police officer. I'm Tristan.
Tristan Starr, okay. Okay.
Okay, first of all, our police work very hard in our community. Not only are they here, there, and everywhere that's needed, they're needed in a lot more places than we can send them. What I was talking about here was just opening the door to some things I'd like to discuss in the future when I was talking about graffiti versus tagging. I come from a large city, and this has been my home for going on 12 years, and I love it here. But we're a small city, and many people have graciously done wonderful things over generations with building this beautiful city. But there's a different consciousness today. We have everything from technology and media to, we're just a global, technology-centered environment where everything is in our face. And a lot of youth or young people, or just people in general, don't know the difference between what is window dressing and what is reality. And the urban sense of tagging, of drive-by shootings, of murders in our streets, our roughhousing behavior that takes a life in our downtown historic district, these are things that are coming to us from every angle, and we're discussing with video games, we're discussing with music, we're discussing with fashion. And as a former fashion designer, there's a way to go. You can take things and you can take it to an edge, but when you cross over that edge, and the game becomes real, that's when it's antisocial behavior, psychopathic personality disorders, and we're not even looking at these things in our society. We're looking at a really nice town. We're getting ready for Christmas. It's the best time of the year, but we have a lot of things going on in the city. And to lose a police officer, that's just like one more message we're giving. It's okay. This is the wild, wild west. Step ahead. Put the screen in your window. Make some money selling drugs, whatever it is. I mean, I don't want to put myself up because I'm on TV and I'm living in this city, but there's a different way of negotiating reality in this world. I mean, I'm fine with the fashion, I'm fine with the music, depending upon how far the wordage goes. But to take a police officer off of our streets with the urban sense that we've grown into as a smaller city, I think it's sending the wrong message. I think it's sending a message that it's okay. It's okay to get away with it as long as you don't get caught. And that is not something that we want the generation that's going to be supporting us as aging baby boomers to have as their mantra or as their civic pride. We should continue with our police officers. We should continue with trying to beautify our city. And we should just look for other ways to communicate with youth or to create people that are underemployed or unemployed.
Thank you very much, Tristan. Appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Virgil.
I hadn't really intended on speaking tonight. Tonight I'm speaking as the president of the Shelton Police Guild, not as a police officer. The budget puts the chief in an untenable position. It's ridiculous. It's not favorable to the citizens of this town. I mean, some of the comments, the crime rate we discussed as the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs released for 2012, the average crime rate per 1,000 in the state of Washington is about 65. Shelton is 354 per 1,000, the highest in the state of Washington. The violent crime rate in the state of Washington average is 3.4. Shelton's is 7.2. We are the fourth highest violent crime rate per 1,000 in the state of Washington. Tacoma, Lakewood, and Tuckwell are the only ones above us. The proposed removal of a detective who will no longer investigate the crimes we're dealing with means those crimes have to come to the patrol officers who are already overburdened and have a hard time responding to enough calls as it is. This is only going to cause a higher crime rate and more danger to the citizens of this city. And I think our first obligation is to the citizens of Shelton.
Okay. Thank you very much, Virgil. Appreciate your comments. So, that was a public testimony part on that budget hearing, and we have, as commissioners spoke, if there's anything anyone else would have to say, now would be the time. So, there's one other opportunity. I think we have about a week. This is going to be placed under old business. We are not voting on the final budget now, are we? Next week is old business. So we're going to go back and rethink, re-talk, and see what we can do on this. I mean, that's what I've said, what I can say, and I'm sure my fellow commissioners have too. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. This is how we're going to get to what the city is going to want to do. So hopefully we can take it from there. So anyway, at this moment, I'm closing this public hearing. Okay, and we're going to go back into our regular business meeting, and it appears that we are in agreement on the staff let's see what we need right now here. So we're preparing the ordinance, so I don't think anything we do right now, we're just putting this under old business. Am I reading my notes correctly? Yeah, okay, so we're going to bring this back December 9th under old business, and which will be another opportunity to talk about this. So, that ends all those public hearings. Now we go into like our regular mode of business, and that is the consent agenda. So if my fellow commissioners are prepared, which I believe they are, Tracy, could we please have a reading of the consent agenda?
Consent agenda, vouchers numbered 82261 through 82328 in the amount of $213,858.68. Interlocal agreement with PUD number 3 for LED street lighting project, authorizing the mayor to sign. Civic Center rotating art gallery. Basin 3 Ecology State Revolving Fund application, commission approval to submit this application to Ecology for Basin 3 construction funding. Ordinance number 1834-1113, second reading and adoption, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, amending Chapter 5.04, Chapter 8.70, and Section 20.06.030 of the Shelton Municipal Code and adding a new Chapter 20.72 to the Shelton Municipal Code related to the regulation of marijuana facilities. Ordinance number 1832-0713, second reading and adoption, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, amending ordinance number 1832-0713 and Shelton Municipal Code, Chapter 18.06 relating to building and construction codes, adoption and replacing with a new Chapter 18.16 adopting the International Building Codes.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The consent agenda passes. Next is old business, and what we do is we have a North Cliff sewer dry line temporary connection to discuss, and Greg Clark, our Public Works Director, will be talking about that. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Greg Clark, Public Works Director. Mike Michael unfortunately went home ill today, and so I'm filling in, so I'm kind of getting my thoughts organized here. The way I'm going to just talk about this is, as per your briefing, kind of a timeline of the events that transpired in requiring this, or not requiring, or suggesting anyway, this temporary connection to a dry line sewer to provide sewer service to a development, actually two side-by-side developments that are happening along North Cliff. Late in 2010, these two short plats located in unincorporated Mason County moved forward in their processes, and those short plats were preliminarily approved for both wells for drinking water and on-site sewer septic systems. The properties abutted North Cliff, which North Cliff was improved back in '07, I believe it was, and during that improvement, a dry line sewer that actually was put under the pavement because we didn't want to cut new pavement, but that sewer was installed to allow for the future extension of that sewer in a permanent capacity, tying it to our active sewer system. Between then and 2010, we went after and looked for funding for what we call Basin 3, of which this is a piece of it. This connecting permanent sewer will happen under Basin 3. And at that time, roughly around March 2012, we received tentative approval for the funding through Public Works Trust Fund. It's an organization through the state, and we were thinking all good things about this permanent sewer going into place. However, it wasn't until roughly June of this year that the trust fund was kind of under the budgetary review of the state. It was determined that they were not going to fund the projects under Public Works Trust Fund. So now all of a sudden, Basin 3 looks like it's not going to happen. and we have this development out on North Cliff that wants to develop, and the developers are moving forward with their plans, and they are anxious to get sewer service. Well, at that point in time, Mike Michael contacted the Mason County and said, you know, we have sewer service and that available if we can connect this dry line, but right now we're on hold. As I mentioned earlier, they had approvals for the on-site septic systems and all that, which, in looking at from our perspective, this is in an annexation area we feel will happen over the next few years. Maybe longer, but at some point it'll annex into the city. And these septic systems, once installed, they're going to have a life of, 20 to 30 years, but then they're going to fail. And it's all kinds of health-related stuff there, along with the fact that we would lose out on having them as part of a customer. We want to hook them up to our sewer, and provide them water. So anyway, we talked to DOE at that time about what would be the ability to provide a temporary connection from the end of our dry line sewer down North Cliff and connect it into our active permanent sewer system. There were further discussions, and initially they gave us approval for 3. They now have upgraded that to, we could actually hook up to 6 lines onto a temporary sewer. And this would buy us some time, obviously. This is not a permanent fix by any means, but it seemed like a good idea for a lot of reasons. So anyway, this particular connection would go from the intersection of Poplar down North Cliff along the northerly edge, and then right near Canyon Creek would connect into our system. The developers continue to move forward with his development plans for the extension of sewer service within his 14-lot, 2 short plats there, and that is continuing to move forward. But there was a concern, as the commissioners have expressed, that we want to make sure that we don't lose out on annexation to this area, that things are in place, that things won't fall through the cracks, and on-site systems would be allowed, that kind of thing. They currently are allowed, but it appears to be an attractive offer or option, certainly within the lots in that subdivision, that when they do want to get a building permit, economically it would make sense to them to hook up to our sewer and to take extension and hook up to our water service. So the whole annexation question came up, how that's going to be dealt with, and how are we going to monitor the building within Mason County to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks. Commissioner Olson kind of orchestrated, went out and talked to the county, and we at staff level have talked to the county, and I think there's some really good things in place here now. The county's indicated they will flag all 14 of these parcels in their GIS, so at the time of application for building permit, that they will be turning those owners to come down and talk to us about getting a utility permit for both water and sewer. When they come down to the city, we will review that permit, and we will ask them to do 2 things. They're going to have to pay the GFCs, which will help pay for the cost of this temporary line along with future connection through Basin 3. They will then be required to process their permit, and that will then go back to the health department at the county prior to them approving the permit. So that is kind of I think a fairly good way of making sure that happens. This particular process, we're going to continue to work at staff level to make sure all the niches and glitches are not in the. But it appears to be a really good understanding at this point in time. Dave O'Leary would like us to get an actual memo of understanding possibly between staffs to make sure that this all happens and continues to happen. But to allow now this temporary sewer to be installed, it would cost roughly about $28,000 to do the connection. This would be covered by about the first 3 to 4 of the GFCs that would be paid. Like I said, there's a potential of 14 eventually. We have a tentative approval for up to 6 through DOE, and this, when the permanent connection is made, the Basin 3 extension up North Cliff, the pipe can actually be pulled out of the ditch and salvaged during the construction of Basin 3's extension. So it will be basically about $10,000 worth of salvage value out of that existing pipe that we're going to put in that's a temporary pipe. And so, as staff, we feel this is in the best interest, both long-term and short-term, for the city. It's an environmental advantage, we feel, and the ongoing revenues associated with getting these as customers, I think, is good for both the water and sewer utility. And so, as such, staff would recommend that we work to get this temporary sewer installed using sewer utility reserve funds, which will, hopefully be replaced in the short term with GFCs as they come in, and to allow the city administrator to make the appropriate budget modifications to get this in the budget and be paid for out of our sewer utility.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, I had the reason I went to the county and worked with our staff here was, currently in the, to build a house in the city limits, before your permit is issued, you pay all GFCs up front. And this project is in the county, so the builder has been able to build his house without paying the GFCs to this point, to my knowledge. And so I like this situation that it'll be a level playing field whether he's building in the city or in the county. And so I'm satisfied with this situation. The only other thing I would put forth is that before we proceed with this project is that the GFCs be paid before our crews start working.
Okay.
Because I think that's only fair. That's the way it has to be for someone who builds in the city. And I think that I've been approached by a couple other builders. One of them was right up near Mr. Ashby's project there that, it cost him well over $15,000 before he got his permit, and only because he's a couple blocks away in the city limits there. So I'm satisfied now with the way this has gone, as long as those GFCs are paid prior to the shovel hitting the ground.
Questions, comments? Sure, absolutely. Name, social security number, bank accounts, all that stuff. Just kidding. After 2 hours, you start mumbling. Or hour and a half, I guess. Who won the Seahawks game? Did anybody know?
27-7.
Oh, okay. I can't monitor those things from up here, but...
I was going to report that for you.
Commissioners, Mr. Mayor, I'll start with a question. I'm trying to understand what you just said, Mr. Olson, about paying all of the GFCs. Are you saying all GFCs for 14 lots up front?
No.
Just the one?
Just one.
Just one?
Just the one you've got going, yes.
Right. And you're wanting those paid at the time of hookup?
No, before we start the project.
Before we start the project. I see what you're saying. Okay. Well, we're right at that point anyway, so I don't object to that. I guess in principle, I mean, for the others, it would be, according to your regular policies, that when the service is hooked up, that's when you pay.
No. Prior to the issuing of the building permit. That's the way the ordinance is in the city. You pay those before your permit's issued.
That's with the city?
Yes.
But it's a county building permit.
Right, but I think that to make it a level playing field, that's a fair thing.
It's still a city-county partnership here, I realize that, but it's still under this...
Well, there's been issues in other cities where these aren't collected at that time, and then we have to play catch-up down the road trying to get them. So I think it's a level policy for everybody concerned.
We would provide, obviously the city provides sewer adequacy or whatever, saying that sewer is available. That's in order to issue a building permit with the county. And with environmental health, they would have to know that. So, it's not that way with anybody else. Is that right? You're making an exception for this?
No, that's the way it is for all.
Inside the city limits.
And the way I
If you, to issue a building permit.
Any house built in the city limits, your GFCs are payable before the permit is issued.
And it sounds to me like that's the way the flagging is going to work with the county, that they would flag it and they will not issue the county building permit until those fees are paid.
Okay.
Which is the way it is in the city.
Let me just reiterate the process. So when you go to the county and try to get a building permit on any one of these 14 lots, they're going to say you're going to be, for the arrangements that have been made between the county and the city now, they are understanding that you're going to connect to the city sewer and water. So they will send the owner, you or the property owner that maybe buys a lot, down to the city to get a utility permit. Before we'll issue that utility permit, they have to pay the GFCs and they have to sign an agreement saying they won't oppose annexation. At that point in time, we will sign off on it, send it back to the county, and then they'll issue you your permit at that time.
Okay.
Seems to be the way that they've done it. It's kind of,
well, that's certainly
I don't know
better.
if we have any other. I don't know if we have any other property of houses or permits in the county that we've done this to. I guess this is the only one so far. So.
Yeah, I don't object to that. And in principle, it's certainly better than paying 4 or 6.
Yeah, no.
Up front,
Yeah, no.
or whatever.
I think it's one at a time.
But I'd like to make it clear about, how we got into this. And
Sure.
When I went to Michael and Mr. Clark last summer, and we discussed all of this, they came up with, in good faith, they came up with a reasonable way to handle the situation and presented, to the extent that they produced a written letter to the Department of Environmental Health of the county stating that this was going to happen. There was no discussion of fees, or I didn't even know at that time that it would end up in the commission. And so that's the reason we move forward. That's the reason the house is sitting up there. It wouldn't have been done otherwise. And so, I applaud them for trying to work out a solution. But, the city has already given written approval of this project, and authorization to the county. And so we're proceeding on that. I appreciate you taking a look at it and whatever, and I don't know all the protocol about how you administrate your finances, the city's finances, or whatever. But we appreciate it. We think it's a win-win for both of us. And the GFCs will come back into the city's pocket. City will get a new sewer system for 14 lots deeded over, and we thank you for it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ashby. And so any other questions or comments then? It appears you've got everything in writing here, and I read it, and it looks like the way we can proceed. So I guess we would need a motion at this time.
I will make a motion to approve the work as presented on the North Cliff sewer extension of or connection to the dry line and the temporary extension to the main sewer line, using sewer utility reserve funds as needed, and authorize the city administrator to make all necessary budget modifications.
Can I add to that the GFCs be paid prior to the project?
I think that's in here. Is that written in your?
That's part of the agreement with the county, correct?
That's part of the future agreements, is what's in this briefing tonight.
Because the house already has been issued a building permit up there and has not received a utility permit, that he would need to process a utility permit in the near term so that we can, proceed with this dry line or temporary line construction.
Yes.
And to be clear, Mr. Olson has asked that he pays that, as soon as he pays it, then we dig the ditch. Is that what we were looking at? So it appears that's where we are. That's where you are, right? Okay, I think we can agree to that. We had a motion and...
I would
Yep.
second.
Well, let's Mr. Ashby's got, you want to speak a little more on this?
Well, just a question. On
Yeah.
last week you passed the comprehensive plan change, which actually lowered GFCs. When does that take effect?
I would think it'd take
Not yet.
effect.
Not yet.
Oh, January 1st? When does it take effect?
Last
January
week?
1st?
No, it'll be some duration. I'm guessing next year.
I mean, is there policy about that, or something, there's a plan for that?
Yes, Mr. O'Leary.
Assuming that was done by ordinance, then the ordinance is published and then is effective 30 days after that.
All right, you got me.
All right, well, that's all right, the first one, anyway. All right, sounds like we have a motion to approve this. Is there a second?
I would second that.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Very good. The motion passes. All right, now under old business, I think we'll take item number 1 that's written, item number 1 first. It's a budget extension for the bond fund, and this is Kathy Byerly again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I'm here before you tonight to request an extension to the 2013 budget for the bond fund. This is in order to provide expenditure authority to support the refunding of the city's 1999 limited tax general obligation bonds and the city's 1998 unlimited tax general obligation bonds. When we prepared the 2013 budget, we focused on new revenue, water, sewer revenue bonds, and refunding of some other revenue bonds. We weren't sure if we would even be able to include these general obligation bonds. But what with working with the underwriter, and he found a way to kind of do them at the same time to provide an economy of scale, which saved us considerable money. So we went ahead and did them with that back there in, late summer, somewhere in summertime, which all those ordinance came through. So we just need to, requesting to extend the budget to accommodate that money flowing through it that came in off the proceeds. Now, the good news is by refunding these bonds, both of them, we had a savings. And on the LTGO bonds, the limited ones, it was a little over $57,000 over the life of the bonds, which were 6 years. And on the UTOGO bonds, it's a little under $60,000 and over the life of 4 years. So that was a savings to the taxpayers directly on the UTGO bonds for the property taxes, a little bit less they have to pay each year. And then also on the LTGO bonds, it just reduces the amount to the general fund, so we're able to spend that money elsewhere.
What were those bonds used for originally?
Both those bonds were originally issued to build this building here, the Civic Center. The unlimited, the UTGO bonds was the first wave of money to build it, and they needed additional monies for the next phase. And so they issued the second 1999 LTGO bonds. So it paid for the building that we're in right now.
Any good news we will accept at this point. So I'm all for it. I don't know if we need a motion for that one. Oh, were you finished? I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No. If there's, I would entertain any questions that you might have, and if not, I would request a first reading.
Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Good news. We don't mess with good news. If you say there's some good news, money coming back, we don't usually mess with that one. So it looks like that at this time, it's your recommendation to hold the first reading of this ordinance, okay? Yeah. And it appears my fellow commissioners concur with this, so could we please have the first reading of ordinance number 1841-1213?
I have 1840, you said 1841?
Nope, I got 1841, but you could be right.
Okay.
In my notes, my eyes are going, but it's 1841. I don't know.
I got 1840.
You do? Sorry, I can show you where somebody, I'm not naming any names. Let's go with the 1840 then.
Okay. Ordinance number 1840-1213, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, extending the 2013 budget for the bond fund by providing additional revenues and expenditures that could not have been foreseen when the 2013 budget for the city was adopted.
Okay. And the second reading of this ordinance will be placed on the consent agenda for December 9th. Moving right along to item number 2 under new business is something hot off the press. Mr. Clark is going to present an emergency roof repair request to us.
I handed the commissioners earlier on kind of an overview on this emergency roof repair. We experienced our roof down at our shop it blew off in the big Saturday windstorm here about 3 weeks ago. We've been trying daily, pounding the phones, trying to get roofers to get in here and give us bids. And we've got 3 bids. The handout I just gave you, 3 bids are currently pending. 2 of them have submitted additional information on their warranty. The third one, Send Roofing, they did do that, along with they included their sales tax in the bid. My button on. What we're hoping to do here, we need to get a roof on the building. This week looks like, due to the clear weather, there's an opportunity for a weather window. We could get going on this thing. We're afraid if we get a big snow that the tarps that we put on the roof are going to start leaking. So I'd like the commission to approve Dave O'Leary to authorize notice to proceed if we can get the appropriate information from the 2 low bidders, so we can make a good selection, both based on materials, warranty, and their schedule to start immediately till we can get that roof going. And we do have an insurance check, I believe, in the mail for $15,000 that will go against these totals that you have in front of you. And I believe it was a $20,000 insurance estimate on what the loss was, and we have a $5,000 deductible, so that leaves $15,000 that will go to this project. So with that, I'd entertain, if possible, that take action tonight so we can move during this weather window, because I'm scared about...
Questions or comments?
So, Greg, this is a clear weather, but it's cold. Does that affect anything?
It's my understanding that the torch down, it's a hot down, put down process, all 3 of them. It's a torch down process, but they can do it even in this weather condition. So, and their warranty will reflect, its duration. So,
questions or comments? Well, these things happen. They're called emergency roof repair, and so I guess I am confident to consider a motion to do what you've just said. So,
okay.
I would move that we authorize the city administrator to sign for and approve all necessary budget modifications for this scope of work, pending warranties from the chosen contractor.
Necessary budget amendments.
And include necessary budget amendments.
There's a motion?
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Next on our agenda, after 1 hour and 43 minutes, or 47 minutes, is a long and lengthy administration report.
Does anybody got anything? Because Greg?
We wouldn't want to go home and watch the game. I just have one touch tonight. We have in process...
Touches are coming.
Oh, okay.
That was the administration report.
Yes.
Remember, we have a general public comment coming after that, so...
I think we're done with the administration report, Your Honor.
Okay, that one's all done. If there's any other comments, which I hear none, see none, want none, then let's move on into administration final touches.
Final touches, Greg.
I do have one small touch. We have an on-call engineering for engineering support services. We put out there a whole bunch of requests and notice. They've submitted their packages. We've reviewed the submittals, and we want to bring forward a recommendation for 6 of them, and we'll brief on next week.
All right, very good. Any more administration final touches? Hearing
Your
none.
Honor, we're ready to go home and watch the win the game.
Well, maybe it's gone in overtime. Our next meeting will be Monday, December 9th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.